On December 31, 2001, the American couple consisting of Michael Thompson, a 28-year-old civil engineer from Phoenix, Arizona, and his fiancée Jennifer Walsh, a 25-year-old architect originally from Tucson, disappeared without a trace during a New Year's Eve celebration at a countryside estate on the outskirts of Sedona, Arizona, becoming one of the most baffling and disturbing missing persons cases in the history of American holiday festivities. Michael and Jennifer, known for their exemplary romantic relationship and promising professional careers, had arrived on December 30th at the rural property Desert Winds Ranch, owned by the Harrison family, to participate in an intimate New Year's celebration with approximately 30 guests, including close friends, college colleagues, and family members who had planned to welcome 2002 in a relaxed and festive environment surrounded by Arizona's stunning red rock landscape. The couple had been last seen around 11:50 p.m. on December 31st actively participating in the celebration, dancing, toasting with champagne, and expressing excitement about their wedding plans scheduled for July 2002, according to testimonies from multiple witnesses who described them as especially happy and animated throughout the entire evening. Where are you reading from? Share your city and country in the comments before continuing this story. The property, Desert Winds Ranch, located in a mountainous area 18 miles from downtown Sedona, was a traditional Southwestern-style estate that the Harrison family had owned for 2 generations and regularly used for family gatherings and special celebrations. The celebration that night had proceeded normally, with live country music, a barbecue dinner featuring regional specialties, fireworks at midnight, and a festive atmosphere that continued until approximately 3:30 a.m. on January 1st, 2002, at which point guests began retiring to their assigned rooms or preparing to return to their homes. When the hosts, Robert and Patricia Harrison, conducted a guest count on the morning of January 1st to organize New Year's Day brunch, they discovered that Michael and Jennifer were not in their assigned room. Their personal belongings had been left untouched, but they had completely disappeared without informing anyone about their departure or destination. 6 years later, in 2007, the accidental discovery of preserved evidence in an underground cistern on the property would reveal a chilling truth that would forever change the understanding of their disappearance and expose a network of crimes that had been operating under the facade of respectable family celebrations for years. The initial investigation, led by Detective Captain Sarah Martinez of the Coconino County Sheriff's Office, became a complex search operation involving multiple law enforcement agencies, specialized search and rescue teams, and extensive interviews with the Sedona community that knew both the missing couple and the Harrison family. The search revealed the inherent complexities of investigating a disappearance on a private rural property where security cameras were limited. Potential witnesses were primarily guests from a celebration who had consumed alcohol, and cooperation varied significantly depending on personal relationships and trust in local authorities. Investigators conducted exhaustive interviews with all guests present at the celebration, including family members from both families, college friends of Michael and Jennifer, professional colleagues, and service staff hired for the occasion, but their testimonies were consistently similar. The couple had been present and active throughout the celebration until approximately midnight, after which no one specifically remembered seeing them. Analysis of Michael and Jennifer's personal finances revealed no significant debts, economic problems, or unusual transactions that could suggest a motivation for voluntary disappearance, and interviews with their families and friends confirmed they had been enthusiastic about their marriage plans and had not expressed concerns or conflicts that could explain a sudden departure. The investigation expanded to include the possibility of kidnapping or criminal activity, with particular attention to the relatively isolated location of the property and the presence of guests who were not intimately known by the hosts, but background checks on all attendees revealed no significant criminal history or documented suspicious behavior. Search teams used tracking dogs to thoroughly examine the property's 200 acres and surrounding desert areas, while specialized divers inspected an artificial lake located 600 meters from the main house. But no physical evidence of Michael and Jennifer or their personal belongings was found. Authorities also investigated the possibility that the couple had been victims of an accident, considering that the mountainous area contained several deep canyons, abandoned mine shafts, and rugged terrain where they could have fallen accidentally during the night, but exhaustive searches with specialized equipment produced no results. As weeks turned into months without significant progress, the investigation began to consider more unusual scenarios, including the possibility of human trafficking, organized criminal networks, or even the involvement of someone present at the celebration who had privileged access and knowledge of the couple's routines. The case attracted considerable national media attention, with networks like CNN and Fox News publishing regular reports about the investigation's progress, and Michael and Jennifer's families organizing public press conferences to keep the case in national consciousness. But despite multiple leads and theories, none led to concrete advances in resolving their disappearance. The 6 years that followed Michael and Jennifer's disappearance were marked by their families' tireless efforts to keep the search alive and maintain hope, while dealing with the emotional and financial devastation that their absence had brought to their lives. Michael's parents, engineer David Thompson and Dr. Susan Williams, became tireless advocates for missing persons' rights, organizing monthly marches from Sedona to the state capitol offices, distributing flyers with the couple's photographs, and constantly pressuring authorities to keep the investigation active. Jennifer's parents, architect Robert Walsh and teacher Margaret Foster, used their family savings to hire private investigators specializing in missing persons cases, including experts in forensic analysis and crime scene examiners, who meticulously reviewed the Desert Winds Ranch property using more advanced technologies than those available during the initial investigation. During this period, both families received dozens of false leads and reports of Michael and Jennifer sightings in various American cities, from Los Angeles to Miami, each of which was exhaustively investigated by private investigators, only to result in mistaken identifications or deliberately false reports. The Desert Winds Ranch property experienced a significant decline in its use for social events after the disappearance, with many acquaintances of the Harrison family avoiding the location due to negative publicity and speculation about the property's safety, resulting in the family considering selling the property that had been in their family for generations. The Sedona community was divided in opinions about what had happened to the couple, with some residents speculating they had fled voluntarily to start a new life in secret, while others suspected criminal activity or even conspiracy involving prominent local community individuals. News media revisited the case annually on the anniversary of the disappearance, interviewing the families and updating the public on any new developments, but the lack of concrete evidence made these stories increasingly repetitive and speculative. Authorities officially reclassified the case as presumed death after 4 years, which allowed the families to begin processing some legal matters related to Michael and Jennifer's properties and life insurance. But both families refused to accept this designation and continued insisting their children were alive somewhere and would eventually return home. During this time, amateur investigators and unsolved mystery enthusiasts began examining the case, creating online forums and elaborate theories about what might have happened, some involving elaborate conspiracies ranging from satanic cults to organ trafficking experiments. As 2007 approached, both families had begun to lose hope of finding answers, with several relatives suggesting it might be time to let Michael and Jennifer rest and focus on honoring their memories. But both David Thompson and Robert Walsh remained inflexible in their determination to never give up the search for the truth about their children's fate. On August 22, 2007, 6 years after Michael and Jennifer's disappearance, an accidental and macabre discovery completely changed the course of the investigation when specialized water system technicians arrived at Desert Winds Ranch to perform emergency maintenance on the water supply system that had been experiencing pressure problems and contamination during the previous weeks. The technicians, hydraulic engineer James Morrison and his team of 3 assistants from Southwest Water Systems had been hired by the Harrison family to diagnose and resolve persistent problems with the main cistern that supplied water to the entire property, and had begun producing water with strange odors and tastes that raised suspicions of bacterial contamination. When the technicians began draining the underground 40,000-gallon cistern to access the internal filtration and pumping systems, Morrison noticed something unusual at the bottom of the structure that didn't correspond to normal sediments or known equipment that should be present in a potable water cistern. As they reduced the water level enough to illuminate the bottom with high-powered flashlights, Morrison was horrified to distinguish what appeared to be partially decomposed human remains preserved by the anaerobic conditions of the sealed cistern, including clothing that matched descriptions of what Michael and Jennifer had worn on the night of their disappearance. The technicians immediately stopped the draining work and contacted both the Harrison family and local authorities, transforming what had begun as a simple maintenance service call into the reopening of the region's most notorious disappearance case. Forensic investigators who arrived at the scene confirmed that the remains belonged to a young man and woman who had been in the cistern for approximately 6 years, with initial evidence suggesting they were Michael Thompson and Jennifer Walsh based on physical characteristics, dental records, and clothing that matched descriptions from the night of their disappearance. The discovery not only provided answers about the couple's fate, but also raised deeply disturbing questions about how they had ended up in that location, who had been responsible for placing them there, and why no one had noticed evidence of their presence during the 6 years the cistern had been in regular operation, providing water to the property. The Harrison family expressed shock and horror upon learning of the discovery, insisting they had no knowledge of the remains' presence and cooperating fully with the renewed investigation. But the revelation also raised serious doubts about the safety and supervision of the property they had operated for years, without realizing they were using water contaminated with evidence of a double crime. The forensic analysis of the remains found in the cistern, conducted by Dr. Patricia Rodriguez, chief forensic pathologist at the Arizona Department of Public Safety Crime Laboratory, definitively confirmed they belonged to Michael Thompson and Jennifer Walsh, and revealed crucial evidence about the circumstances of their deaths that would transform the case from a mysterious disappearance into a complex double homicide investigation. The partial preservation of the remains due to the anaerobic and chemical conditions of the cistern allowed forensic experts to perform detailed autopsies that revealed both Michael and Jennifer had died from severe blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with being repeatedly struck with heavy objects, and that there was evidence of struggle suggesting both had attempted to defend themselves before their deaths. Even more disturbing, analysis of materials found with the remains, including fragments of rope, industrial duct tape, and metal objects, indicated both victims had been bound and possibly tortured before being murdered, suggesting the crime had been committed by multiple perpetrators with specific knowledge of the property and prolonged access to the cistern. The position of the remains within the cistern, carefully placed along with heavy objects to ensure they would sink and remain at the bottom, indicated whoever had concealed the bodies had experience in evidence disposal or had meticulously planned the concealment to avoid detection during normal cistern use. Examination of additional evidence found with the remains included the characteristic jewelry both victims had worn during the New Year's celebration, including Jennifer's engagement ring and Michael's watch, confirming they had been killed while still wearing their celebration clothing. Investigators also discovered the cistern had experienced technical problems beginning approximately 1 week after the couple's disappearance, with maintenance records showing multiple service calls during the following 6 years related to water quality. But previous technicians had been instructed by property management to perform only surface repairs without completely draining the cistern. This evidence suggested someone had been deliberately interfering with the water system to prevent the type of deep maintenance that would eventually lead to the discovery of the remains, indicating an ongoing conspiracy to conceal the crime over an extended period. Toxicological analysis of preserved tissue samples revealed the presence of powerful sedatives in both victims, suggesting they had been drugged during the celebration before being taken to the location of their death, but also indicating they had been conscious during at least part of their final ordeal. The presence of genetic material under both victims' fingernails provided DNA evidence that would be crucial for identifying their killers, while analysis of clothing fibers found at the scene suggested the attackers had worn specific garments that could be traced to specific celebration guests. Forensic investigators also determined the process of transporting and concealing the bodies in the cistern had required considerable time, effort, and knowledge of the property's infrastructure, suggesting the crimes had not been impulsive acts, but carefully planned events executed by individuals familiar with the layout of Desert Winds Ranch. The renewed criminal investigation that followed the forensic discovery of Michael and Jennifer's remains triggered an intensive operation that exposed a complex network of corruption, violence, and criminal activity that had been operating beneath the surface of Sedona's seemingly respectable social life for years. DNA analysis of evidence recovered from under both victims' fingernails produced matches with 3 individuals who had been present at the New Year's celebration. Brandon Harrison, the 33-year-old son of the property owners who worked as a real estate developer, his business partner Tyler Reed, aged 30, and family cousin Marcus Stevens, aged 26, who had a history of domestic violence. Confronted with the forensic evidence, all 3 men initially denied any involvement in Michael and Jennifer's deaths. But after intensive separate interrogations, Brandon Harrison finally confessed not only to the murders, but also revealed a disturbing pattern of criminal activities he had been involved in with his accomplices for years. Harrison admitted that he and his partners had been operating an extortion scheme targeting successful young professionals who attended social events at elite rural properties, using information obtained during celebrations to identify potential victims with significant financial resources and vulnerabilities that could be exploited. On New Year's Eve 2001, according to Harrison's confession, Michael and Jennifer had been selected as targets after conversations during the celebration revealed details about their successful careers, family properties, and substantial bank accounts that made them ideal victims for kidnapping and extortion. The initial plan had been to drug the couple to incapacitate them, transport them to a secure location off the property, and hold them captive while demanding ransoms from their families. But when Michael had regained consciousness prematurely and begun to resist, the situation had escalated to violence. The confrontation had resulted in Michael's accidental death during the struggle, and the conspirators had decided to also murder Jennifer to eliminate witnesses, using blunt objects found on the property to fatally beat them before disposing of the bodies in the cistern. The investigation also revealed that Brandon Harrison had not acted alone in the planning, with evidence indicating his father, Robert Harrison, had knowledge of his son's criminal activities and had actively helped conceal evidence to protect both the family reputation and their real estate interests in the region. Financial records examined during the investigation showed Robert Harrison had paid for multiple water system repairs during the following 6 years, but had specifically instructed technicians to avoid complete cistern drainage, suggesting he knew what they would find if they performed thorough maintenance. Even more disturbing, the investigation discovered Michael and Jennifer had not been the only victims of the criminal network, with evidence connecting the conspirators to at least 3 other missing persons cases in rural properties throughout the region during previous years, though these cases had never been connected due to lack of physical evidence and the geographic distribution of the crimes. The legal and social consequences of Michael Thompson and Jennifer Walsh's case extended far beyond the criminal charges against the direct perpetrators, triggering significant reforms in safety regulations for private events, missing persons investigation protocols, and protections for guests at private rural properties throughout the United States. Brandon Harrison was sentenced to life in prison without parole for aggravated double murder, kidnapping, and criminal conspiracy, while Tyler Reed and Marcus Stevens received sentences of 50 and 40 years respectively for murder, kidnapping, and evidence concealment. Robert Harrison was sentenced to 30 years for accessory after the fact, obstruction of justice, and operating a property in a manner that facilitated criminal activities. The case inspired the creation of Michael and Jennifer's Law, federal legislation requiring all rural properties used for social events with more than 25 guests to implement specific safety protocols, including guest registration systems, security cameras in common areas, and background checks for service staff and family members involved in event organization. Arizona authorities also established the Thompson-Walsh Protocol for missing persons investigations on private properties, requiring complete forensic inspection of infrastructure such as cisterns, wells, and underground spaces when individuals disappear under suspicious circumstances during social events. Michael and Jennifer's families used the legal settlements from the case to establish the Michael and Jennifer Foundation for Social Event Safety, which provides education about risk recognition at private events, legal support services for families of victims of violence in social contexts, and training programs for event organizers on preventing risky situations. The Desert Winds Ranch property was permanently closed for social events after the revelation, with the property being sold by the Harrison family and converted into a trauma rehabilitation center offering specialized services for families affected by violence and disappearances. Michael and Jennifer's story became a case study used in criminology schools, social work programs, and hospitality management courses throughout the United States, teaching about the importance of creating safety protocols at private events and the devastating consequences when social trust is abused for criminal purposes. Rural tourism organizations adopted the case as a symbol of the need for greater protections for guests at private properties, especially during events where alcohol and celebrations can create vulnerabilities that criminals can exploit. The investigation also led to reforms in water system maintenance protocols for rural properties, with new regulations requiring all cistern and underground system maintenance be performed by independent certified technicians with specific training in identifying potential evidence of criminal activity. A decade after the discovery that had finally provided justice for Michael Thompson and Jennifer Walsh, the impact of their case continued to influence social safety policies and law enforcement operations throughout the United States, while their memory served as a powerful reminder of the importance of maintaining vigilance even in the most seemingly safe and trustworthy social environments. The Michael and Jennifer Foundation had grown to become a national organization operating social event safety education programs in 40 states, having provided training to over 60,000 event organizers on recognizing danger signs, guest verification protocols, and legal resources available when criminal activity is suspected in social contexts. Technological advances inspired by the case had resulted in the development of improved monitoring systems for rural properties, including security cameras with remote transmission capabilities, emergency communication systems that allowed guests to discreetly contact authorities, and tracking protocols that alerted family members when guests didn't return according to established schedules. Michael and Jennifer's Law had been adopted by multiple states and had inspired similar legislation in other countries, establishing international standards for protecting guests at private events and rural properties. Michael and Jennifer's parents, now in their 70s, had found purpose in continuing social justice work, with David Thompson becoming a consultant specializing in security for private events, and Robert Walsh working as an advisor for families of victims of violence in social contexts. The case had inspired multiple documentaries, books, and television programs that educated the public about hidden risks that can exist even in seemingly safe social environments, and about the importance of family communication and personal safety protocols during private events. The forensic investigation of the case had also led to the development of new techniques for examining underground infrastructure at private properties, with specialized protocols for inspecting cisterns, wells, and hidden spaces that might be used to conceal evidence of crimes. Improvements in missing persons investigation procedures implemented after the case had resulted in faster resolution of similar cases, with multiple investigations in the United States and other countries using the Thomson-Walsh Protocol to discover evidence that had been hidden in private property infrastructure. The memorial established at the site where the bodies were found had become a place of reflection for social safety advocates and families of violence victims, serving as a reminder that constant vigilance and safety verification are necessary even in the most seemingly trustworthy social contexts. 15 years after the truth about Michael Thompson and Jennifer Walsh's fate was finally revealed, their names had become synonymous with the fight for social event safety and protection of vulnerable guests, inspiring a generation of activists, legislators, and security professionals dedicated to preventing similar tragedies. Their names appear on social protection legislation in multiple countries, on security systems implemented in thousands of rural properties and event centers, and in training programs that have educated hundreds of thousands of event organizers about risk recognition and guest protection protocols. The Michael and Jennifer Foundation had evolved into an international organization with an annual budget of over $20 million, funding research on violence in social contexts, providing free legal services for families of victims of crimes at private events, and advocating for government policies that strengthened protections for guests at private properties. David Thompson and Robert Walsh, now internationally recognized as social safety experts, had found that transforming their pain into positive action had provided both healing and purpose in the decades since losing their children, becoming respected figures in the victims' rights movement. The Thomson-Walsh Protocol had been adopted by law enforcement agencies in multiple countries, facing similar challenges in investigating disappearances related to social events, with variations of the procedure being implemented in Canada, the United Kingdom, and several European countries with significant rural tourism populations. The story had inspired fundamental changes in how rural properties and event organizers approached guest safety, with many companies voluntarily implementing stricter standards than required by law, including more rigorous background checks for staff, improved supervision systems, and extensive training programs on violence prevention and risk situation recognition. Forensic techniques developed during the case investigation had found broader applications in criminal investigations, being used by police departments worldwide to examine underground infrastructure and hidden spaces in missing persons and homicide cases. Educational programs inspired by the case had reached millions of people across North America, providing vital information about recognizing dangerous situations at social events, communicating safety plans with family members, and accessing emergency resources when feeling threatened in social contexts. Rural property infrastructure regulation reforms inspired by the case had led to better inspection and maintenance standards, with requirements that all underground infrastructure be regularly inspected by independent certified technicians who receive specific training in identifying potential evidence of criminal activity. Today, more than 2 decades after Michael Thompson and Jennifer Walsh began their final New Year's Eve celebration at Desert Winds Ranch, their legacy lives in every safety protocol that protects a vulnerable guest, every verification system that identifies potential risks at private events, and every investigation that uses advanced forensic techniques to uncover hidden truths in missing persons cases. The advanced technologies inspired by their case have evolved into intelligent monitoring systems that can detect patterns of suspicious behavior at social events, emergency communication protocols that instantly connect guests with help resources, and forensic investigation techniques that can discover hidden evidence in the most complex and unexpected infrastructure of private properties. The American social event and rural tourism industry, once vulnerable to criminal exploitation due to lack of regulations and supervision, now operates under some of the world's most comprehensive guest protection protocols, with verification and supervision systems that have been developed specifically to prevent the type of victimization that Michael and Jennifer experienced. The Thompson and Walsh families, though forever marked by the devastating loss of their children, had found purpose and healing through their tireless work to protect other guests, transforming their personal tragedy into a powerful force for positive social change that has impacted the lives of millions of people. The Thompson-Walsh Protocol has been adopted by countries worldwide facing similar challenges in protecting vulnerable guests, creating an international network of safeguards that would have been unimaginable when Michael and Jennifer attended the celebration that ultimately cost their lives. Their photographs, taken during happier days when they smiled brightly while planning their future wedding, are displayed in the memorial as reminders that they were real people with dreams, hopes, and families who loved them. Not simply statistics of social violence, but individuals whose lives had profound meaning and whose deaths inspired fundamental changes that have benefited countless other guests. Michael and Jennifer's story continues to be told in classrooms, event training centers, and public education programs that teach new generations about the importance of maintaining safety protocols at social events, verifying the safety of organizers and properties, and maintaining constant vigilance even in the most seemingly trustworthy environments. The systems that now protect guests at private events are so advanced that many attendees never realize the multiple layers of security operating around them, from monitoring systems to verification protocols that ensure every guest returns home safely. Each person who returns home safe and sound after a social event carries with them a bit of the legacy of Michael Thompson and Jennifer Walsh. And every case of criminal activity at events that is detected and prevented appropriately fulfills the implicit promise that their sacrifice was not in vain. Their story demonstrates that even the darkest tragedies can be transformed into forces for good, when love, determination, and commitment to justice combine to create lasting changes that protect society's most vulnerable members, ensuring that Michael and Jennifer are remembered not only for how they died, but for the countless lives their death ultimately helped save and protect.